and I welcome Marc, our next presenter, who will showcase some of his short films about flagship species in different parts of the world to us. And yeah, without further delay, I just hand it over to you, Marc.
Okay, hello. Thanks for having me. I've enjoyed some of these other talks. If I could just use a little help here, making sure I get my screen shared correctly.
Sure.
So, can you see that?
Yep.
And is that full screen?
Yep, perfect.
Excellent.
All right.
So thank you, everybody. My name is Marc Dragiewicz. I'm from a very small production company, just me and my wife. It's called Eyes of Gold Films. So I'm taking a brief trip around the world to talk about decent flagship species and other creative efforts that I've seen used to conserve wild lands. I've had interactions with a lot of these different projects, and yeah, I just want to share them with you. But first, I liked some of the origin species I was hearing from some of the other presenters. So my origin began as a boy living in the woods in Michigan. I had this very guidebook right here. And I just love looking through the plates and seeing all the different kind of animals that I could possibly see in the woods near my house. Like a young boy, I was very much into frogs, turtles, snakes, anything interesting like that. Kind of help you introduce to what is biodiversity and biogeography, thinking about where you can see these different things. And then I got exposed to these wildlife cards that had animals from all around the world. And I saw a couple of these spectacular frogs that just really blew my mind. One's a black and green poison dart frog from Costa Rica, and another is a golden toad from Costa Rica. Just the colors and the patterns on these frogs, it really made me, they just really impressed me for whatever reason. So I started biology. I started volunteering out of college I wanted to see the world. So I started volunteering on scientific projects, doing bird research. I was in different places in the Amazon. Perhaps the most wild place I've ever been was working at Cochacashu Field Station. This is in southeastern Peru, in Manu National Park. It's a whole day boat ride from a tiny village you have to fly to. They did some transects north of this station here, and they discovered signs of uncontacted people. So this is about as wild as you can get. It just really made me appreciate what we still have in places in this world and how important it is to save it. So going back here, I ended up visiting Monteverde in Costa Rica. It's a Cloudforest reserve. I was there in 1995, and I saw pictures of this toad everywhere. And I realized, wow, I might finally get to see this. And then I learned right away that this toad became extinct in 1989. So that was another lesson in the fragility of our wildlands. Okay. So now I have this film production company, and the challenge is how to engage people, how to get them interested in conservation. One way this is often done is with the flagship species. So one definition I have for flagship species is it's just a species that uses a symbol to protect an entire ecosystem. It gets people something to engage with. Perhaps the first example of this was in Virunga National Park in Rwanda. this population of mountain gorillas lived on top of the mountain in this wet forest. It was imperiled back in the 60s and 70s when these gorillas were just starting to be studied. People were hunting them for trophies. They were getting stuck in shares, and there was horrible habitat lost. Early conservationists were able to get some land protected there, but then it was threatened with a large agricultural project. They thought it was more important to feed people than it was to protect this habitat. Conservationists suggested that people would come to see these species in the wild habitat. Back in the 70s, this was not really a concept people thought about. Ecotourism was just beginning then. And it was thought crazy that people would travel somewhere very hard to get to and trek to the mud to see these animals. But now this park has thousands of people coming all the time to see these animals. They pay a lot of money to see these animals. And they can take these revenues, they do community outreach, they protect the park, they do community development, and it turns out to be a very successful project. It actually, I think they're actually expanding right now, which is unheard of when you think about the in context of where this park actually is. So if you look at this slide here, these top two photos, this is nearby in Uganda. That's Bwindi National Park. And you can see this stark contrast between this super dense agriculture, and then there's a straight line there, and you have primal African wilderness. Like in that forest right there, there's mountain gorillas, there's chimpanzees, there's forest elephants, all kinds of very rare megafauna. And what I found very interesting is in densely populated areas, there's a point where you have to draw a line. And here you can see they've done it very well. And you see lines like this elsewhere. The bottom left is a typical scene where you see in Cloudforest in the tropical Andes. And then on the right, I think this is Madagascar. And a lot of places you have very similar intense agriculture. And then you have forests subsiding further up the mountainsides. So, so nowadays, you have a lot of different groups of animals that are used as flagship species. It's not just giant spectacular primates. There's a very big culture surrounding birds and birding. So you get something like a spectacular giant parrot like these scarlet macaws in Tamaulipas in Peru. Again, you have people spending a lot of money to travel to a very difficult location where you can see flocks of hundreds of these giant spectacular parrots. And it's not just big flashy animals either. Like in Mexico, they have preserves just for these large gatherings of monarch butterflies. And then even tiny animals like these colorful poison frogs you see in the lower part of the screen there. There's actually burgeoning culture around frogs, and there's people that travel just to see these frogs. And there's preserves being developed specifically to save frogs. And then even plants now, like this is the Rafflesia. It's the world's largest flower. It's quite a spectacular spectacle. And people travel to see these in Southeast Asia. So the first place I'd like to talk about here is Los Cedros. It's a reserve in northwestern Ecuador. It's a high elevation forest in the Andes above the Choco forest that's on the Pacific slope, separate from the Amazon. One thing unique about this forest is they have a lot of orchids. And what we see on the bottom here are Dracula orchids. They're called that because of a lot of them have these red colors, and they have these long filaments at the end of their petals, kind of like the shape of a vampire, I suppose. This preserve is currently threatened because of overlapping mining concessions. And there's a very interesting thing going on here right now. In the Constitution of Ecuador, it's written in there that nature has a right. And they're taking this to court to try to set precedents of nature having that right over industrial interests like mining. And if this can, if this court case wins, it'll set precedents for thousands and thousands of hectares of forest to be saved in Ecuador. So I think someone's going to share with you guys on chat the link to this first video here, and we can watch this first short video, and then we'll come back. Okay, that was video number 2. All right, let's see if we can smooth things out here for this last half of our talk here. So I'll explain what you saw there in a moment. And then when we get to that slot, we'll play this previous video. So anyway, what I was trying to show in this video was just a spectacular landscape at Los Cedros, and we'll see this in a minute. And with the case of the court case going through, and this whole ecosystem is kind of acting as a flagship for conservation in that country. So that's why I wanted to talk about this. It's just an interesting stretch of the uses of flagship species. This is a flagship ecosystem. So do we want to try to share video number 1 right now, so we can see that?
Yeah, Julia just posted it into the comments, so now people have the time to watch it, which is only 2 minutes long.
Okay, great.
All right.
All right. So like in this picture here, you can see this is a very beautiful forested valley. Not many places like this left on Earth. Itapoa National Park. So this is essentially expanding.
Sorry to interrupt you. You have to share your screen again. We cannot see your presentation anymore.
Let's see this. Did that work?
Yep, perfect.
All right, I will not leave the screen again. And then over one of these ridges here, there's another organization, and their focus is orchids. They're called Ecominga, and they run a neighboring preserve here. So this is very interesting because they started, again, not with a giant spectacular species like the gorilla, but this tiny little orchid you see in the top of your screen, the top left, that's a genus Lepanthes. The founder of this organization was a birder in the tropics, and he started getting interested in these orchids and started learning about them. He realized they're very diverse. There's new species everywhere. He started giving lectures about it, and he accidentally discovered a great resource, which is wealthy orchid enthusiasts. And he was able to start buying up land, and this organization has large chunks of super diverse, super rare forest scattered throughout northern Ecuador in the Andes. And this is kind of opposite of what you saw with the what happened with the gorillas. You have this large, spectacular primate being protected, and all these little tiny species protected underneath it. Here they started trying to save these little habitat for these little orchids, and they're saving these big, spectacular species that are very rare, like the spectral bear in the top right, mountain tapir, bottom right, woolly monkey. And they're also discovering new species of plant and reptiles and amphibians in these preserves as well. One interesting thing they did is this map here shows top and bottom of that map are large high elevation national parks. That squiggly line through the middle is a river, and this is a deep valley. And none of that land between the parks was saved, even though with the elevation gradient, it's very, very diverse. And there's lots of endemic species in here. And they actually started buying up land, and they created a corridor that goes all the way down to the floor of the valley, back up to the national park on the other side. It's actually the one place where the highway that goes down that valley goes underneath the tunnel. So you have a thin strip of continuous landscape between these two parks. So they're reconnecting to wild areas. It's a very interesting use of orchids to protect many species. So continue with Ecuador. I was working with an organization called Itapoa, and they're a little lower in elevation, a little more towards the coast than Los Cedros. And they're protected some forest in the foothills of the Andes. Choco's very wet, very diverse. The founder here is a big frog enthusiast. He has a frog in his logo there. And after buying and protecting some land, they wanted to create a buffer around that. So they had this very clever idea of starting up a co-op to help these farmers on the edge of civilization there grow organic fair trade cacao. They get top dollar for their product. And to belong to the co-op, you had to have 75% of your land forested. There's rare monkeys like spider monkeys here, all kinds of rare birds. I think it's a very clever compromise between landowners and conservationists. One very interesting species here is Bufaga salvatica. It's a poison dart frog. And if you look at the map, you can see there's all these different subspecies. We're in the Cristobal Colon area where that yellow dot is. But if you go just a little across a river, across a valley, you see these different species of frogs. And there's a whole frog culture like there is a bird culture. People travel to see these frogs. In Puerto Quito, I think that's the third frog up there, they have a frog festival, and people come from not just Ecuador, but from around the world, visit these forest patches just to see this little frog. You see the second frog from the top, it's the Santo Domingo morph. This area suffers horrible deforestation from palm oil, bananas, other agriculture. I think the only piece of forest in that area is preserved specifically for that subspecies of frog. So this is an interesting look at how frogs are used as flagship species in conservation. So that was the first video I think we watched. I was trying to appeal to the frog community who, a lot of them, they want to keep these frogs in captivity, look at them, trade them, breed them, whatever. I wanted to gauge them into thinking about where these frogs came from and the importance of saving their habitat. So that was that first video I think you guys all saw. So another interesting thing about this area is this Itapoa Preserve borders two other protected areas. One is run by Washu, and they're focused on spider monkeys, which is a very rare primate in the area. And then they also border land from Hokotoco. I think there was a talk by Hokotoco the other day. They conserve endangered bird habitat. So it's another interesting mosaic of a larger piece of forest being preserved kind of through different special interests and strategies. So recently in Colombia, where there's also choco forest just over the border, there's been some peace between FARC, which is like guerrilla drug dealers in the wild parts of Colombia, and the government. Areas that were very, very dangerous for a long time became less dangerous. And it's now possible to visit Southwest Colombia somewhat safely. And Itapoa got involved with a community there. It's an indigenous Afro community that's been there for hundreds of years. And they're trying to do the same strategy with the cacao. There actually was a lot of cocaine production in the area, or coca growing. I don't know if they produced the cocaine there. So I visited there a couple winters ago, and we actually saw clearings in the jungle where there was cacao plants, sorry, coca plants everywhere, but they had been kind of abandoned and let go. And they were planting cacao, and the cacao is actually going to grow up and replace the coca, so they can have a safer, more sustainable product that didn't involve all the violence and all the horrible things they've been experiencing over the years. So I think that's our next video. Video number 3 is a short introduction to this, and a look at how this frog here is part of the conservation of the area.
Okay, so now we posted the link to the 3rd video in the chat, so everybody who wants can watch it. Unfortunately, your time is over, Mark.
Oh, I'm so sorry for all the technical difficulties.
No problem.
I have links for all of this on this slideshow, which I think is going to become public at some point. And if anyone's interested, I can send you guys a post with all the links.
Okay, thank you very much, Mark. Yeah, I'm sure people want to see the rest of it, and we will post all the links to all videos in the chat.